The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power is an American fantasy television series developed by J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay for Amazon Prime Video. Based on the novel The Lord of the Rings and its appendices by J.R.R. Tolkien, the series is set in the Second Age of Middle-earth, thousands of years before Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It is produced by Amazon Studios in association with New Line Cinema, and in consultation with the Tolkien estate. Amazon bought the television rights for The Lord of the Rings from the Tolkien estate in November 2017, making a 5-season production commitment worth at least $1 billion. This would make it the most expensive television series ever made. Payne and McKay were hired in July 2018. The series is primarily based on the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, which include discussion of the Second Age, and Tolkien's grandson Simon Tolkien was consulted on the development of the series. Per the requirements of Amazon's deal with the Tolkien estate, it is not a continuation of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit film trilogies, despite having the involvement of New Line Cinema, responsible for both trilogies. The production intended to evoke the films using similar production design, younger versions of characters from the films, and a main theme by Howard Shore, who composed the music for the trilogies. Bear McCreary composed the series' score. A large international cast was hired, and filming for the 8-episode first season took place in New Zealand, where the films were produced, from February 2020 to August 2021. Amazon moved production for future seasons to the United Kingdom, where filming for the second season began on October 3, 2022. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power premiered on September 1, 2022, with the first 2 episodes, which Amazon stated had the most viewers for a Prime Video premiere. The rest of the 8-episode first season ran until October 14. It has received generally positive reviews from critics, with particular praise for its cinematography, visuals, and musical score, but some criticism for its pacing and characterization. Premise: set thousands of years before the events of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, the series is based on author J.R.R. Tolkien's history of Middle-earth. It begins during a time of relative peace and covers all the major events of Middle-earth's Second Age, the forging of the Rings of Power, the rise of the Dark Lord Sauron, the fall of the island kingdom of Numenor, and the last alliance between elves and men. These events take place over thousands of years in Tolkien's original stories but are condensed for the series. Cast and characters. Elves. Morfydd Clark as Galadriel, a warrior who believes evil is returning to Middle-earth. The series shows the character's journey from a warrior to the elder stateswoman that she is portrayed as in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. Robert Aramayo as Elrond, a half-elven architect and politician prior to his founding of Rivendell. Benjamin Walker as Gil-galad, the High King of the Elves, who rules from the realm of Lindon. The character is mentioned in Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings in a poem called The Fall of Gil-galad. Ismael Cruz Cordova as Arondir, a Sylvan elf with a forbidden love for the human healer Bronwyn, similar to Tolkien's love stories about Beren and Luthien and Aragorn and Arwen. Charles Edwards as Celebrimbor, the renowned elven smith, who forges the Rings of Power. He is a brilliant artisan known throughout Middle-earth who is friends with the dwarves of Hazad-dum-men. Nazanin Baniadai as Bronwyn, a healer and mother who owns an apothecary in the Southlands. Tyro Muhaffadin as Theo, Bronwyn's son. Lloyd Owen as Elendil, a Númenórean sea captain and Isildur's father. Cynthia Ade Robinson as Myriel, the Queen Regent of Numenor, an island kingdom ruled by men descended from Elrond's half-elven brother Elros. Tristan Gravel as Pharazôn, a Númenórean advisor to Queen Regent Myriel. Maxim Baldry as Isildur, a Númenórean sailor. Ema Horvath as Irian, Isildur's sister. Leon Wadham as Keeman, Pharazôn's son. Dwarves. Owen Arthur as Durin IV, son of Durin III and the Prince of Hazad-dûm. Prince Durin has a strained relationship with his father and wishes to expand Hazad-dûm's wealth by mining the newly discovered mithril. Sophia Namvet as Dissa, Durin IV's wife and Princess of Hazad-dûm. Harfoots. Lenny Henry as Sadok Burrows, a Harfoot elder and pathfinder. Sarah Zwangabani as Marigold Brandyfoot, Largo's wife. Dylan Smith as Largo Brandyfoot, Nori's father. Mark Ella Kavanagh as Eleanor Nori Brandyfoot, a Harfoot youth with a yearning for adventure. She is the daughter of Largo and stepdaughter of Marigold. Megan Richards as Poppy Proudfellow, a curious Harfoot and Nori's friend. Other races. Daniel Wayman as the Stranger, one of the Istari, who falls from the sky in a flaming meteor. Charlie Vickers as Halbrand/Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor disguised as a Southlander man who sets in motion the creation of the Three Rings after befriending an unwitting Galadriel. Joseph Mall as Adar, a Nuruk, an elf corrupted by Melkor, who is the leader of the orcs that have been capturing men to dig tunnels and take the Southlands as their new home. His name is Sind Aaron Forefather. Episodes. Production. Development. Background and announcement. Creative team. Seasons. Writing. A writer's room for the series had begun work in Santa Monica by mid-February 2019. Salka described extensive security measures that were being taken to keep details of this writing secret, including windows being taped closed and a security guard requiring fingerprint clearance from those entering the room. In addition to Payne and McKay, writers on the series include Jennifer Hutchison, Helen Shang, Jason Cahill, Justin Doble, Brian Kochman, and Stephanie Folsom, with Glynis Mullins acting as a consulting writer. The writers' room was set to be disbanded once production on the series began, but would be reconvened during the 4 or 5 month break in filming that was scheduled following production on the first 2 episodes. The writers were expected to map out the second season and write the majority of its scripts during this production break. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are set during the Third Age, while the First and Second Ages are explored in other Tolkien writings such as The Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, and The History of Middle-earth. Because Amazon only bought the television rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, the writers had to identify all of the references to the Second Age in those books and create a story that bridged those passages. These are primarily in the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, but also in certain chapters and songs. Tolkien's estate was prepared to veto any changes from his established narrative, including anything that contradicted what Tolkien wrote in other works. The writers were free to add characters or details, and worked with the estate and Tolkien lore experts to ensure these were still Tolkienian. They referenced the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien for additional context on the setting and characters. Simon Tolkien, a novelist, and the grandson of J.R.R. Tolkien, consulted on the series and helped develop its story and character arcs. He is credited as a series consultant. The showrunners disagreed with suggestions that the series was only vaguely connected to Tolkien's writings. McKay said they felt it was deeply connected and a story we're stewarding that was here before us and was waiting in those books to be told. A disclaimer is featured in the series' end credits stating that some elements are inspired by, though not contained in, the original source material. Payne and McKay knew the series was expected to run for 5 seasons and were able to plan elements of the final season, including the series' final shot, while working on the first. Because they were mostly not able to adapt direct dialogue from Tolkien's Second Age stories, the writers attempted to repurpose Tolkien's dialogue that they did have access to while also taking inspiration from religious texts and poetry. They tailored the dialogue to different characters using dialects and poetic meters. Leith McPherson returned from the Hobbit films as dialect coach and noted that Tolkien's fictional languages evolve over time, so they are different for the Second Age compared to the Third. The series' elves mostly speak Quenya, a language described as Elvish Latin that is often just used for spellcasting in the Third Age. Dwarvish and Orcish are also heard, along with English, Scottish, and Irish dialects. The biggest deviation made from Tolkien's works, which was approved by the estate and lore experts, was to condense the Second Age from thousands of years to a short period of time. This avoided human characters frequently dying due to their relatively short lifespans, and allowed major characters from later in the timeline to be introduced earlier in the series. The showrunners considered using nonlinear storytelling instead, but felt this would prevent the audience from emotionally investing in the series. They said many real-life historical dramas also condense events like this, and felt they were still respecting the spirit and feeling of Tolkien's writings. After the series was revealed to have hired Jennifer Ward Leland as an intimacy coordinator, Tolkien fans expressed concern that it would include Game of Thrones-style graphic sex and violence. Payne and McKay said this would not be the case and the series would be family-friendly. They hoped to evoke the tone of Tolkien's books, which can be intense, sometimes quite political, sometimes quite sophisticated, but it's also heartwarming and life-affirming and optimistic. They also said they did not want to be influenced by modern politics, instead aspiring to tell a timeless story that matched Tolkien's own intention to create a mythology that would always be applicable. The first season features several locations not previously seen in the film adaptations, including the elf capital Lindon and the island kingdom of Numenor, but it also revisits familiar locations from the films such as Hazad Dum, which is in ruins during the Lord of the Rings films but is shown in its full glory during the series. One of the groups that the series includes are the Harfoots, depicted as precursors to the popular Hobbit race from The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. Payne and McKay explained that they felt the series would not truly feel like Middle-earth to the audience without hobbits. Tolkien's writings state that the hobbits were not known during the Second Age, so they chose to explore the Harfoots instead, saying they were satisfyingly hobbit-adjacent. The Harfoots are depicted as having a secretive society and their story takes place in the margins of the bigger quests, which was compared to the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. McKay said the first season was about reintroducing this world and the return of evil, focusing on introducing the Second Age of Middle-earth and the heroic major characters rather than telling a villain-centric story. Despite being mentioned in a synopsis for the series and being a major character in the Second Age, the Dark Lord Sauron was reported to not be appearing in the first season at all. McKay said the season was influenced by dialogue from the second chapter of Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, The Shadow of the Past, which he paraphrased as after a defeat and a respite, a shadow grows again in a new form. Bayona said the season would hint at the presence of Sauron, and the overall story was about the repercussions of war and the shadow of the past. He was influenced by his own childhood growing up in Spain following the Francoist dictatorship. Casting. Salka stated in June 2018 that though the series would not be a remake of the films, it would bring back some characters from them. By July 2019, casting for the series was taking place around the world, with casting directors working in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. Casting for extras also began in New Zealand at that time. Due to the secrecy surrounding the series, many actors did not know what roles they were going to play when they were cast. Mark Ella Kavanagh was in talks to portray a character referred to as Tyra at the end of July, a series regular role. Will Poulter was cast as one of the series' leads, reportedly called Belder, in September. The role was described as being one of the more coveted jobs for young actors in Hollywood before Poulter's casting. Maxim Baldry was informally attached to the series in a significant role in mid-October, while Joseph Mawle was cast later that month. Mawle was reportedly playing the series' lead villain, referred to as Orin. In December, Emma Horvath was cast in another series regular role. Poulter was forced to leave the series due to scheduling conflicts, with his role set to be recast, and Morfydd Clark was cast as a young version of the character Galadriel, who was portrayed in the films by Cate Blanchett. Robert Aramayo was cast in a lead role, replacing Poulter, in early January 2020. He was later revealed to be playing a young version of the character Elrond, who was portrayed by Hugo Weaving in the films. A week after Aramayo's casting, Amazon officially announced his involvement along with the casting of Owen Arthur, Nazan and Benaidi, Tom Butch, Clark, Ismael Cruz Cordova, Horvath, Kavanagh, Mal, Tyro Muhafadan, Sophia Namvet, Megan Richards, Dylan Smith, Charlie Vickers, and Daniel Wayman. After 6 or 7 auditions, Vickers was unknowingly cast as Sauron after the showrunners gave him 2 monologues of William Shakespeare's play Richard III and of John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost to recite for the role as Halbrand. Given how the latter monologue was spoken by Satan, Vickers started suspecting that his role was for a villainous character, but remained unaware of Halbrand actually being Sauron until the showrunners told him during the 3rd episode's filming. Amazon CO head of television Vernon Sanders noted that there were still some key roles that had yet to be filled. One of these key roles was confirmed to go to Baldry in March, when his deal for the series was completed. Baldry replaces Harry Sinclair as Isildur, who appeared in flashbacks during the films. In December 2020, Amazon announced 20 new cast members for the series: Cynthia Ade Robinson, Baldry, newcomer Ian Blackburn, Kip Chapman, Anthony Crum, Maxine Cunliffe, Tristan Gravel, Lenny Henry, Thusitha Jayasundara, Fabian McCallum, Simon Merrills, Jeff Morrill, Peter Mullen, Lloyd Owen, Augustus Prue, Peter Tate, Alex Tarrant, Leon Wadham, Benjamin Walker, and Sarah Zwangabani. Owen and Walker portray Elendil and Gilgalad, who were briefly played by Peter Mackenzie and Mark Ferguson in the films. In March 2021, Budge announced that he had departed the series after filming several episodes. He explained that Amazon had reviewed the first episodes and decided to recast his character, who was reported to be Celebrimbor. Charles Edwards was cast to replace him as Celebrimbor in July, when Will Fletcher, Amelie Child-Villers, and Bo Cassidy were also added to the season's cast. 7 of the series' main actors are New Zealanders, and overall a third of the first season's 124 speaking roles went to New Zealand actors. The rest of the cast came from Australia, Sri Lanka, the United Kingdom, and the United States. While promoting the first season at San Diego Comic-Con in July 2022, the showrunners said they would give a role in the second season to television host and avid Tolkien fan Stephen Colbert, who was moderating the series' panel at the convention. A month later, they said the character Círdan would be introduced in the second season. The character briefly appeared in the Lord of the Rings films portrayed by Michael Ellsworth. Design. It was Jackson's understanding in December 2018 that the series would be set in the same continuity as the films, and Amazon wanted to be consistent with the designs that were created for them, which illustrator and concept artist John Howe reiterated in August 2019, saying the showrunners were determined to remain faithful to the designs of the film trilogies. Payne and McKay later clarified that the series is not a direct continuation of the films, per Amazon's deal for the series, but they did not want it to clash with the films and tried to have similar designs. They took advantage of Howe's experience working on Jackson's adaptations, as well as that of costume designer Kate Hawley, who worked on the Hobbit films. Other influences included the 1977 animated television adaptation of The Hobbit by Rankin/Bass. Howe had filled 40 sketchbooks with drawings for the project by May 2022, and said the biggest difference between the films and series was the latter visited new locations, such as the oceans of Middle-earth. Avery's biggest challenge was making Middle-earth feel both familiar and new. He chose to build as many practical sets as possible, wanting the series to feel real and honest, to make sure that the actors had a world that felt inhabitable. Payne said being on set was like going to Middle-earth every day for work. Avery used different styles for each location, such as Linden's tree-like columns which were inspired by Gothic architecture. He added arboreal details to reflect the elves' love of nature. Hazad Dum was designed to be less severe than the film version, using a sensitivity toward the stone rather than harsh lines and gargantuan statues to show the kingdom before the dwarves got greedy. Avery compared the large wheels on the Harfoot wagons to the round hobbit doors seen in the films. Payne, Mackay, and Avery put a lot of focus on Numenor, which Payne explained was because it's never been seen before. People have some ideas of what elves look like or what dwarves look like and what those kingdoms might look like. But Numenor was, in some ways, a blank canvas. They planned out the entire city, and made sure that this reflected Tolkien's description of it originally having elvish influences but becoming more mannish as it was developed. Tolkien also compared the city to Venice, so Avery took inspiration from that city and its connection to water. He used the color blue in a lot of the city's locations to emphasize the culture's relationship with water and sailing. Numenor's looming marble structures and bold shapes, rich colors, and geometrical ornament were inspired by ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and the rest of North Africa and the Middle East. The distinct shape of the sails on Numenorian ships were based on the ceremonial headwear worn by Gondorian kings, the descendants of Numenorians, in the Third Age. Avery worked with experts to ensure the ships were still functional with the unique sails. The main Numenor set was almost 300,000 square feet and was described as an entire seaside city with buildings, alleyways, shrines, graffiti, and a ship docked at the harbor inside a large water tank. There were additional sets for specific locations within the city. The sets were built with a lot of real materials that were cheaper to source in New Zealand than the movie fakery typically used to save time and money on sets in Los Angeles. Avery's team also created a form of Roman concrete using seashells that they used in the alleyways to show some of the history of the city. To further help immerse the actors, Avery used real plants, fruits, and incense on set so the smells were right. Yip described the Numenor sets as breathtaking. We were there for weeks, but every day I'd notice a new detail. Jamie Wilson was the head of prosthetics for the series after previously working on the film trilogies. He noted that there had been advancements in the technology available since the films were produced, including encapsulated silicone that looks much more like real skin than previous techniques. The prosthetics team also worked closely with the series' visual effects department for digital tweaks to the prosthetics. The showrunners were particularly interested in the series' depiction of orcs and ensuring that practical effects were used where possible. Wilson explained that the orcs in the series were intended to be younger looking than those in the films, since these groups are just emerging from hiding. Because of this, the series' orcs feature less battle scars than those in the films and are also lighter-skinned with some skin conditions caused by new exposure to the sun. Filming. New Zealand. Season 1. United Kingdom. Season 2. Visual effects. In addition to WTA with Macron FX, visual effects for the first season were created by Industrial Light and Magic, Rodeo FX, Method Studios, DNEG, Rising Sun Pictures, Cause and FX, Cantina Creative, Atomic Arts, and Outpost VFX. 1,500 visual effects artists worked on the season, which has more than 9,500 visual effects shots. Visual effects producer Ron Ames said the effects were completed to a theatrical resolution so they could be shown on screens ranging from televisions to IMAX. Effects work for the season included shots featuring dwarf and Harfoot actors appearing small beside the other cast, set extensions, and big effects sequences. Music. Howard Shore, the composer for the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films, was reported to be in discussions with Amazon about working on the series in September 2020. He was said to be interested in developing musical themes but not necessarily composing the entire score. Shore was confirmed to be in talks for the series a year later, when composer Bear McCreary was reported to be involved as well. Their hiring was officially announced in July 2022, with McCreary composing the score and Shore writing the main title theme. McCreary said the main theme was created independently of the score, but he felt the two fit together so beautifully. McCreary began working on the series in July 2021, and said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work on such an ambitious score with the creative freedom that he wanted. He spent 2 months writing new musical themes based on the scripts, which he compared to writing a symphony, and then used those to compose 9 hours of music for the first season over 8 months. He wanted to honor Shore's musical legacy and hoped to create a continuity of concept between the series and films, with the 15 new themes he wrote for the season being added to the pantheon of memorable melodies that Shore had written. He did note that his music would reflect the series' depiction of these societies at their peak compared to Shore's music for the Third Age, which had a wistfulness and a melancholy. McCreary used different approaches for the different groups in the series. The music for the elves features ethereal voices and choir, the dwarven music has deep male vocals, the Harfoots have music based in natural sounds, and the harmonic language for Numenor has Middle Eastern influences. The score for each episode took 4 days to record, using up to 90-piece orchestras at Abbey Road Studios and Air Studios in London, as well as a 40-person choir at Synchron Stage in Vienna. For the choral music, McCreary pulled text from Tolkien's writings and worked with the series' language experts to write new lyrics in Tolkien's fictional languages, including the Elvish languages Sindarin and Quenya, the Dwarvish language Husdul, Black Speech, and the Numenorian language Adunau. Soloists were recorded in Los Angeles and across Europe playing folk instruments such as the Hardanger fiddle, nickel harpa, bagpipes, and bodhran drums. McCreary was still writing music for the first season in Los Angeles while recording for most of the episodes took place, but he was able to conduct the orchestra for the final episode at Air Studios in April 2022. 2 singles from McCreary's score, Galadriel and Sauron, were released on Amazon Music on July 21, 2022. They were followed by a full soundtrack album featuring Shore's main theme and selections from McCreary's score. The album was released on all major streaming services on August 19 and will be physically released by Mondo on CD and vinyl. The Amazon Music version of the album includes 2 exclusive tracks. Additional soundtrack albums featuring the full score for each episode will be released after the episode premieres. Marketing. Early promotions for the series on social media used several maps of Middle-earth's Second Age, as well as excerpts from the novel The Lord of the Rings. The maps were designed and created by illustrator John Howe and overseen by Tolkien scholar Tom Shippey to ensure they were accurate to Tolkien's works. Howe and Shippey spent a lot of time working on the maps, which were based on Tolkien's maps of Numenor during the Second Age as well as his maps of the Third Age. Despite their efforts, HarperCollins received complaints from fans shortly after the maps were released online regarding 2 mistakes that were made on them. Amazon considered the reveal of the series' full title in January 2022 to be crucial due to it beginning the series' marketing campaign at the start of its premiere year. Instead of just using visual effects to create the title reveal, the studio released an announcement video in which the letters of the title are physically cast from molten metal while an excerpt of the ring verse from The Lord of the Rings is read in voiceover. The video was directed by Klaus Obermeier, who worked with special effects supervisor Lee Nelson under advisement by veteran special effects supervisor Douglas Trumbull. They filmed the video with Found Ryman Landon Ryan in late 2021 in Los Angeles, after experimenting with different combinations of metals, as well as sparkler dust, argon pores, and liquid hydrogen, to create the desired look. The final metal was a mixture of bronze and aluminum which was poured into molds of compressed sand that could be used multiple times. The pouring was filmed at 5,000 frames per second with a Phantom FLEX 4K camera so it could be shown in ultra-slow motion. For the final title card, the forged letters were inscribed with Elvish writing and placed on a large piece of redwood. Staff from the Tolkien fan website theonring.net and entertainment journalists were invited by Amazon to watch the filming of the video. Prologue Films provided previsualization for the sequence as well as compositing and additional visual effects. They recreated the final title card digitally, taking care to maintain the integrity of the live-action shots and lighting. 23 character posters for the series were released on February 3, though unusually they do not feature actor or character names and focus on the hands and torsos of the characters rather than their faces. Amazon said this was to fuel fan speculation and discussion, and it did lead to speculation and analysis about who each character could be. A first look at some of the series' main characters was then revealed on February 10 along with story details, before the first teaser trailer was released on February 13, during Super Bowl LVI. TheonRing.net hosted an official watch party for the trailer on YouTube, while some high-profile fans were flown to Belfer Castle in the Balearic Islands, Spain, to help promote the teaser globally. Commentators noted that the teaser did not reveal many new details about the series, but Graham Gutman of Screen Rant felt it did not hold back on epic spectacle. The Hollywood Reporter's James Hibbard also described the teaser as epic, and felt it showed off the series' large budget, while Susanna Polo at Polygon said it wastes no time reintroducing viewers to the lush fantasy setting many know from Jackson's film adaptations. Writing for IGN, Amelia Emberwing said the most successful aspect of the teaser was that it feels like The Lord of the Rings and appeared to balance the serenity and dangers of Middle-earth like the films did. In contrast, Jack Butler of National Review had felt the first look images were Tolkien-esque but was less sure about the teaser, which led him to think that the series would be more reliant on visual effects than the grounded approach of Jackson's films. Kevin E. G. Perry of The Independent was even more critical of the visual effects, saying the trailer looked cheap and like a cutscene from an old Final Fantasy computer game. Relish Mix reported that the teaser trailer had 80.34 million views in 24 hours across Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, which was the third highest among those airing during the Super Bowl according to their metrics. Amazon reported 257 million views within 24 hours, which they said was a record for any film or television trailer released during the Super Bowl. The early marketing material led to a cacophony of online fan discourse, including concerns about accuracy to the source material and the series' compression of Tolkien's Second Age timeline. Discussing these responses for The Escapist, Darren Mooney said extreme reactions from online media fans were now expected due to cultural forces, an entire online economy running on manufactured outrage, and the near-religious reverence that modern fans have for media. He said the online reaction was likely not representative of general opinions on the series and noted that Jackson's films, which were beloved by mainstream audiences, faced similar complaints from Tolkien fans. In response to the fan concerns, Amazon invited several Tolkien critics, fan websites, and influencers to a screening in May 2022. They were flown to Merton College, Oxford, where Tolkien worked as a professor, and shown 20 minutes of completed footage from the series. They also talked to the showrunners and how. Justin Sewell of TheonRing.net said they were unable to discuss details, but the footage looks like it should, sounds like it should, and feels like a return to the comfortable universe we all love, addressing the concerns of most of the fans in attendance. Caitlin Facista, writing for the Tea with Tolkien blog, said the footage immersed her in Middle-earth in a way that the teaser trailer did not, and she was impressed by the showrunner's knowledge of the source material. Others reported that the screening and discussion with the showrunners made them cautiously optimistic about the series. Corey Olson, an academic and podcaster known as the Tolkien Professor, felt after meeting the showrunners that the series was in very good hands. An exclusive sneak peek of the series was made available to Amazon Prime members for 48 hours on July 6, before being widely released online, ahead of Amazon Prime Day on July 12 to 13. This was followed by a second teaser trailer on July 14 which Hibbard described as a more extensive look at the show's rendition of Middle-earth. Sydney Contreras at E! Online said the teaser and locations were awe-inspiring and breathtaking. Jim Vorel of Paste said it was visually splendid and reflected the large budget, and Gizmodo's Jermaine Lucy said it felt like fans of Middle-earth were going home. Adam B. Very and Wilson Chapman at Variety acknowledged the locations and visuals, but felt the teaser did not explain the story for audience members who were unaware of Tolkien's writings. Writing for Forbes, Scott Mendelson said the teaser was likely not connected enough to the Lord of the Rings films in terms of cast and story to entice general audiences, putting it on par with other fantasy properties inspired by the films that were not successful. Blake Hawkins at Comic Book Resources felt the teaser's inclusion of more Tolkien mythology and lore would help assuage the concerns of Tolkien fans, but TechRadar's Matt Evans said it was unlikely to win over those fans. He explained that many fans had come to accept the changes Jackson made to adapt The Lord of the Rings, but the same could not be said for his Hobbit films. Evans felt the Rings of Power would likely be treated similarly to the Hobbit films due to it being a blockbuster ploy to keep our money, which was the absolute antithesis of Tolkien's work. He added, "Being a good fantasy show on its own merit is simply not going to be enough. It has to be truly great to justify its own existence." The series was promoted at the San Diego Comic-Con in late July with a meet and greet between 21 cast members and a group of Tolkien fans, a private dinner with the cast, crew, Amazon executives, and media, branding on San Diego trains and at the convention's entrances, and a 2-hour panel moderated by Stephen Colbert, who was flown in for the day as a surprise for those in attendance. The panel began with McCreary conducting a 25-piece orchestra and 16-person choir, performing a suite of his original score. A full trailer and 5 clips were shown, and Colbert interviewed the cast and crew. Marketing executive Sue Kroll said the convention was our first real opportunity to show fans our dedication to the source material. Several outlets included the series on lists of winners at the convention, such as The Wrap, whose staff said Amazon took the exact right approach to its Comic-Con presence. For IGN's list, Adam Bankhurst said the panel changed the conversation and created positive buzz for the series in a way that the teaser trailers did not. The trailer from the panel was also released online, and Very noted that it explained the series' premise, unlike the teasers. He and several other commentators highlighted the appearance of a Balrog. James Whitbrook at Gizmodo said there was a lot going on in the trailer and it was looking quite fantastic, while Jack Shepard of Games Radar called it the best look yet at the series. A final trailer for the first season was released in late August, during the week before the series premiere. Multiple commentators pointed out that the trailer came following the premiere of rival fantasy series and Game of Thrones spin-off House of the Dragon, and some suggested that this was a way to remind audiences that the Rings of Power would be premiering soon as well. Also that week, Prime Video announced a promotion with Samsung that would see 8K footage from the series displayed on large LED screens at the Samsung 837 Experience Center and Times Square in New York City, Piccadilly Circus in London, and Piazza del Duomo in Milan. A new book chronicling the events of Middle-earth's Second Age, titled The Fall of Numenor, was compiled and edited by Tolkien scholar Brian Sibley from Tolkien's writings about the Second Age. The book will be published in November 2022, following the release of the first season of The Rings of Power, to capitalize on new interest in Tolkien's works arising from the series' release. The first 2 episodes were screened at premiere events in August 2022, in Los Angeles, Mexico City, Mumbai, New York City, and London. They were also shown in free fan screenings on August 31 in around 200 countries, including the US, Canada, the UK, Ireland, Argentina, Colombia, Australia, and New Zealand. The episodes premiered on Prime Video in the US on September 1. The other 6 episodes of the first season are being released weekly from September 9 to October 14. Episodes are released on Prime Video around the world at the same time as the US release, in more than 240 countries and territories. Reception. Viewership. Amazon announced that The Rings of Power had been watched by 25 million viewers globally in the first 24 hours that the first 2 episodes were available on Prime Video. The company stated that this was the biggest premiere ever for the service. It was the first time that Amazon had publicly stated viewership data for Prime Video, and the company did not specify how much of an episode a user needed to watch to count as a viewer. Analytics company Samba TV, which gathers viewership data from certain smart TVs and content providers, reported that 1.8 million US households watched the series' first episode within 4 days of its release. This dropped to 1.3 million for the second episode, indicating that roughly a quarter of the audience chose not to continue watching after the first. Whip Media calculated that for the week ending September 4, 3 days after The Rings of Power's debut, it was the second highest original streaming series for US viewership behind Disney Plus's She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. It also stated that The Rings of Power had the 5th highest debut, in terms of 3-day viewership following the premiere, in TV Time's history, and retained 87% of the viewership during the second episode. Nielsen estimated that The Rings of Power was watched by 12.6 million viewers in the US during the first 4 days. It also stated that the show was streamed for 1.253 billion minutes in the US for the week of August 29–September 4, acquiring the first rank among both the original and overall titles category. This marked the first time an Amazon series had debuted atop the Nielsen charts. 55% of the viewers were male, and the 35–49 age group formed the largest demographic. For the week of September 5–11, the show was viewed for 1.203 billion minutes and ranked 4th overall according to Nielsen. Data by analytics company Muso revealed that it was the second most pirated TV show worldwide for the week of September 6–12. Accounting for 25.3% of all unlicensed downloads and streaming. According to Nielsen, during the week of September 12–18 it was viewed for 988 million minutes and ranked 2nd overall. It dropped to the 4th rank during the week of September 19–25 while being viewed for 977 million minutes. Head of Amazon Studios Jennifer Salka revealed in late September 2022 that the show had been watched by nearly 100 million customers. Nielsen stated in mid-October that viewers above the age of 35 formed 71% of the audience for the show. Comparisons with I House of the Dragon / I. None. Critical response. On the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power holds an 85% approval rating based on 465 reviews by critics. Critical consensus summarized, it may not yet be the one show to rule them all, but The Rings of Power enchants with its opulent presentation and deeply felt rendering of Middle-earth. On Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, the series premiere has received a score of 71 out of 100 based on 40 critic reviews, indicating generally favorable reviews. The first 2 episodes received generally positive reviews from critics, with particular praise for its cinematography, visuals, and musical score, and some criticism for its pacing and characterization. Kevin Perry from The Independent praised the series, saying that it rummages around in J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings appendices and comes up with gold. Darren Franick from Entertainment Weekly expressed a negative opinion, calling it a special catastrophe of ruined potential, sacrificing a glorious universe's limitless possibilities at the altar of tried-and-true blockbuster desperation while criticizing the characterization of Galadriel. While praising the overall production, Ed Power from the Irish Times and the Daily Telegraph was critical of the Harfoot's affected Irish accents and saw the characters as a depiction of offensive stereotypes of Irish people. Other Irish critics and publications agreed, though some were less critical of this element. The critic Stuart Heritage, writing in The Guardian, described the series as inept. He felt that it was in the main poorly acted because of inadequate direction, though he admired Morfydd Clark's performance. He found the score syrupy, the lighting inappropriate, and the visual effects variable in quality despite the cost of the show. Alan Sepinwall in Rolling Stone commented that one could wish the series would do more with less. There had, he wrote, been memorable, powerful moments, as with the Harfoots, or the way it introduced Galadriel, or Durin's friendship with Elrond, or the battle between men and orcs before Mount Doom erupted. All the same, in his view the mystery box plotting about who would turn out to be Sauron was overblown and not really engaging. Sepinwall found both action and night sequences grossly overlit. He felt, too, that the show appeared uncertain whether it was trying to please Tolkien fans or newcomers. According to CNET's Roger Cheng, writing after the final episode of the first season had aired, at best, it was a lesser version of Peter Jackson's original Lord of the Rings trilogy, particularly the bromance between Elrond and Prince Durin IV. At worst, it was flat-out sleep-inducing. I couldn't stay awake for some of the early episodes, even for the ones set in the beautiful, but oddly soulless Numenor set pieces. Audience response. A day after the series premiered, Amazon began holding reviews of it on Prime Video for 72 hours to ensure each review was legitimate and not coming from internet trolls. James Hibberd of The Hollywood Reporter called this an unusual step, but Amazon stated that it was a policy the company had introduced for all its series earlier in the year. Hibberd said this was partially due to review bombing by users who were posting numerous negative reviews due to its perceived cultural or political issues rather than its actual quality. However, Hibberd also found that the majority of negative reviews focused on other reasons such as the story, acting, and pacing. He felt the audience rating would increase if the series could deliver consistent quality over time, win people over in a similar way to the concurrent Disney and series She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Average reviews on IMDb and Google were slightly higher than the Rotten Tomatoes audience score at that point, but were polarized with the majority of reviews being the highest or lowest possible score. Analysis company Brandwatch found 60% of online discussions about the series in the few days following its premiere to be negative and focused on slow pacing, poor writing and acting, reliance on visual effects, and differences from Tolkien's writings. The other 40% praised the series for promising plot lines, intriguing characters, breathtaking cinematography, and respect for Tolkien. Discussing this data for TechRadar, Tom Power said many of the negative responses were from Tolkien fans that likely did not want the series to be made in the first place, or more casual fans who had been influenced by that group's views. He attributed the positive responses to TV aficionados and other fans. Cindy White at the AV Club described some of the fan discourse as a fight between loyal fans who simply want to preserve the integrity of the thing they love and a multinational corporation looking to cash in on that devotion, and Anthony Palomba, professor of business administration at the University of Virginia, also partially attributed the responses to super diehard people who did not necessarily reflect the views of general audiences. Sean Gunner, the chair of the Tolkien Society, agreed that responses to the series away from social media were more nuanced. He stated that among members of the Society, some loved the series, others were unsure, but very few people are just writing it off. Cautious optimism is probably where most people are at.